Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity again. And I want to thank Reverend Tom for the invitation. And I know this is the last of the series we've been doing. And I'm so excited that today we are talking about what is my legacy? What will people say when I'm gone? What will people say when I've left my current station to the next place? And the truth is, it's not very easy. It's not very easy. You know, we live in a world, my brothers and sisters, that people brag about the things they have, the things they've done, the things they've achieved in life. You know, someone will talk about his car. Sometimes I see people talk about their cars like, man, that thing is a living thing, you know. It breathes. It just, there's a way in which it does certain things until you ask yourself, really, it's just a bunch of metal and plastic and, and a few leather. If you have leather in, other ones, there are some fake things and need some fossil fuel to keep it going and water, But the truth is, people talk about those things like they are living, they are alive, they feel them and connect with them. I know people talk about their music instruments, my friend, like, the thing has surround, the thing has, it has got it's got bass line and all those things. And I look at them and it's like, yeah, the thing doesn't know you exist. So it's important that we actually ask ourselves, when people are talking about the things they have and they brag about the places they've been to, and I know social media has made it even so easy for people to talk about where they've been. You can update where you are. Every place you've gone in, Google can show that you are in this place, I remember I went to a conference somewhere and I met a friend I had not seen in a long while. Then the next thing I am seeing on my Google, because it was showing my location, John Mark is with so and so. It's like, okay, this is not bad. Just that depends on who's reading, because someone will be like, mulikuwa pamoja, you guys were together. That's not healthy, And I looked at that and I said, this is interesting. But in the good old days, when you traveled, you went for holiday or maybe gone to a new place, you only came back with two major things: one, pictures, and memories. You see, and today we post them on Facebook, updating status, and then after 10 years Google will remind you, we remember, we value your memories. So this is where you were 10 years ago. The truth is this: that is not a legacy. Now, people define legacy interestingly. People define legacy as the things you did. The truth is this: no, legacy is not what you did. Let me give you my definition of legacy, and I'll justify it. Legacy is what we choose to remember about what you did. It's not what you did. I don't know everything you did. If I were to remember everything you did, trust you me, you wouldn't want me to tell everybody what you did. But what I choose to remember about what you did. And that is important for us. I'll give an example. Look at the President Kibaki. Was here just a few years back. Kibaki was in politics for 50 years. If someone asks you, can you remember what Kibaki did? Some people will say, oh yeah, Thika Highway. Thika Highway is only 45 kilometers. So how can you remember 45 kilometers, the guy who worked for 50 years, Or he'll talk about free education. Oh yeah. Now, some of us remember Moi because some guys drank Nyayo milk, which is good for some people, and say, yeah. So imagine a guy who was in politics for over 60 years and you remember him with milk, really. It's a lot. So it is what people choose to remember about what you did. And God is so keen on this, to the point that God kept on reminding Israel, remember where I brought you from. Remember I brought you out of Egypt. You are in Egypt. You are prisoners. You are slaves. I got you out of that place with a strong arm. I brought you out of that place with signs and wonders. And the book of Deuteronomy is Moses repeating the story, reminding them, guys, listen, God brought you out of this place with trouble and with terrible things. He showed Pharaoh that Pharaoh is not a god. He showed the Egyptian gods that they are fake and idle. So remember that. And that is supposed to have been the legacy God was reminding them. Choose this. Remember. And Deuteronomy chapter 6 is very key. I actually use it a lot when I'm talking to parents, particularly about raising children, raising godly children, where I tell them that, listen, the Bible says, teach your children, impress it in their hearts. Talk to them when you sit down, when you go to sleep, when you're walking, evening moments, mealtime. Discuss and tell them the things God has done. And remind them when they ask you, why do you obey these laws? Why do you have the commandments? Why do you tell us this story? Tell them we were slaves in Egypt and God brought us out. In other words, this is the legacy of the God we serve. He's not a God out there in the heavens. He's a God who lives amongst us, who walked with us, who is real. And because he is real, he wants to have a relationship with us. And many people forget that. Many people forget when God has done, and I know so many of us here have get into trouble with God. Not that He punishes you for it, but we get into trouble because when you're praying for something, I know some people will say, God, if you give me this job, Lord, I will give not 10%, I'll give 100% of my salary, so that just give me this job. Then we get the job and it's like, God, unajua uchumi ni mbaya, things are bad. So what we do, you just take the 10% and then we can talk later. And then after that, the next month is like, by the way, even that 10% is a lot. See, is it now? They come and ask, Pasi, is it the 10% of the gross or of the net or of the take home? That is, if I've removed the chamas, the SACCOs, the loans, I've paid the house help, wherever, I've paid rent, then what remains? Then you give 10%. I mean, we can negotiate with God after He's come through for us. But yet, while He is available, when we are desperate, we will make promises. You see, God reminds us, you are in this place, I brought you out, and don't forget. And that's why He kept on saying, I'm the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of the Jacob. That's my legacy. I walked with them and they were alive and well. That is real. Now, in our second reading, very exciting, second reading, I love it. Paul tells Timothy, this is Paul's last letter before he died. He tells Timothy, listen, boy, many things are going to happen. In the last days, terrible things are going to. In fact, if you read it, this is like reading news. This is like reading today's news. This is what it says. Let me just read it for you. It says, people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love. In other words, fake fellows, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of anything that is good, treacherous, they are rash, conceited, they are lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. They will go to church, but they don't believe what the church teaches, having a form of godliness, but not believing the power that is in it. This is the description of today's young people. This is the description of adults today, politicians today, teachers, military guys. I mean, think of policemen. They fall under anybody who's got eyes, who's got breath. This is the description of who we are. But Paul tells Timothy, listen, such kinds of guys, let them go. Don't hang out with them because they are not our kind of people. We have been raised with different standards. We talked about what we had to say the other day. We have something better to say, a better message to inspire, to encourage, to motivate, to tell people the truth about the gospel. He gives example of a guy called Jannes and another one called Jambres. The guys who opposed Moses. I mean, the man of God, the guy who had been to the mountain, talked with God face to face, came down, and the guy say, you think you're the only one who can talk to God. Hata sisi tunaweza. You are not the only one. And then the Lord opened the earth and swallowed them. That's part of God's legacy. He can open the earth for you. I mean, sometimes we almost feel like, I don't know whether you've been ever embarrassed so badly. You felt like God would the earth would open for you to be swallowed. I've been in such a situation when maybe you've said something about someone and kumbe you didn't know the person you're telling is the guy. Or the person is sitting next to you. Or a bad situation. Imagine you talked with someone on the phone, you put your phone in the pocket, unfortunately it dialed. And then someone asked you, who was that? He said, it's some useless guy, and you go on talking bad about that particular person. Kumbe anaskiza. He's hearing the whole story. And it's like, by the way, suddenly you pick your phone and you realize it has been on and the other guy didn't cut. He was listening. You'd feel like the earth should open for you to be swallowed. Now, there was a day it happened. Jambres and Jannes were swallowed up by the earth and their families. Crazy thing. But then Paul tells Timothy in verse 10, now listen, Timothy, I got a legacy and I need you to remember it. He says this, but me, you know my teachings. You know my way of life. That's my story. You know my purpose. You know my faith. You know my patience. You know my love. But not just a good, beautiful, nice, lovely, beautiful testimony of I'm a man of power. But you also know my persecutions. You know my suffering. You know the things I went through when I was with you. You know how hard life was. In other words, if I am to tell a story, you can tell my story better. In other words, Timothy, you got my legacy and you got me covered. All right? So this is what you need to do. Do what God has called you to do, okay? Forget the bad stuff. Concentrate on the good things. You are an evangelist, preach it. Do the job you are called to do. Love the scriptures. Speak it in public, in private. Read it. Do whatever from infancy, verse 15 says, you have known the holy scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation. Remember, he's talking to a young guy. This, if you want to be smart and wise, the scripture can do. So he reminds Timothy All scriptures is God inspired, God breathed. In other words, it is God himself breathing through us, and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that you and I can be equipped for the good work we've been called to. In other words, Timothy, you want to leave a legacy? Start with the Bible, because that's where the story is. Now, the problem we have, my friends, is this. Many of us have got a story, and your story, your neighbors know, your friends know, your brothers and sisters know. If they were to tell us your story, you would not love it. No, you wouldn't want anybody to hear the whole story. You know, somebody said that if God would put a video camera in our brain to tell people what our minds go through, we will disown. We would, no. That's not me. That's not what I was thinking. That's not what I was thinking. You see a guy's car, or you see some pretty girl, or you see some hot jammer, and it's like, ding, ding, ding. Why? Because what's going through your head needs to be edited and need to be muted. Why? Because we know it is not very, very healthy. So what was God keen on? God tells Israel, I don't want you to forget. I don't want you to forget. So let me just remind you as a brief way, God's legacy, and then we ask ourselves, what about us? God brings them out of Egypt. But before he leaves Egypt, he wants Egyptians to remember, because he's living. Remember, I said that legacy is when you move to the next phase. So Israelites are moving out of Egypt, but God wants them to remember. So what does he do? He beats Pharaoh, hands down. After beating Pharaoh hands down with the plagues and everything, the last guy he beats, he gets all the children. In fact, in the morning I was doing a service and I was telling guys that, when you talk about what God can do, God proves his God in many ways. Pharaoh was worshipped as God, and Pharaoh's people had other gods. And what all God wanted to do is to prove to them that I am God, and we am not a competitor. We are not competing. We are not equal here. So what does God do? He tells Moses, listen, go show Pharaoh this. Throw the stick down. The stick is thrown down, and guess what? Pharaoh's magicians also say, that one we can do. We can handle that. They throw theirs and they turn into snakes. But Pharaoh's swallow is like, okay, that's not normal. Ours don't eat anything else. They don't eat fellow snakes. Then he says, okay, put your hand in your what? In your coat. He brings it out and is leprous. Now, leprosy stood or represented death, isolation, quarantining. Because all those things that we are going through during COVID. And then he puts it back, and it's back to normal. He says that I can take care of you if you walk with me. But if you're on your own, death will be on your case. And then Pharaoh guy said, we can do that. Then he says, okay, that was introduction. Like when you're reading a book, there's an introduction. He said, okay, let's go to chapter 1. Chapter 1, the Red Sea. No, not the Red Sea, but the water turns into blood. Now, let me show you something deeper, because I know some of you are young guys. Maybe you're not deep Bible students, but let me show you something deep, particularly for the adults. Now, listen to what happens. It is the water that turns into blood. Now, remember, water is said that water is the what? Source of life. Now, so life turns into blood. Now, blood is supposed to be sign of death. But in this particular case, source of life turns into source of death. But we are so told that the blood of the animal or of a person is in the life of a person is in the blood. So then blood is life and water is source of life. Now, I want you to remember that at Calvary, when Jesus was pierced, the same two things came out, water and the blood. Okay? So the source of life and life itself. That's exactly who Jesus says I am. I am the bread of, I'm the life. I am the resurrection and the life. So that basically tells you that God tells Pharaoh, you might be thinking you have water, but you do not have life, which is the blood. But I can have it. And then how do we know that? Because the water turns into blood, and it started smelling around. But then God brings out frogs out of water, out of the blood, which means there's something alive in the blood that is supposed to be symbolic of Christ here. So Christ was with Moses in Egypt. But you know what happens? The process goes on up to the last one. There's total darkness. There's a lot of things that are happening. And then finally, the last one is all the firstborns of Pharaohs are killed. Now, what does the firstborn stand for? He stands for your authority. It stands for your inheritance. It stands for succession. It stands for prosperity. It stands for the future. But that's what God killed. Remember, Pharaoh was also a firstborn. So God says, I will wait for the last laugh. So Pharaoh, you will see the last laugh. I don't want you dead when I'm killing the firstborns. I will do the last one, and then guess who will be laughing? So he takes him up to the Red Sea. And what happens at the Red Sea? Legacy of God, God tells Moses, why are you crying? Come on, lift the stick up and let me show you what I can do. The Red Sea split. And he said, guess what? Oh, it was the water that had turned into blood. But for now, I want to show you the last thing it will do. The children of Israel cross, and Pharaoh begins to cross with the other team and says, Pharaoh, guess what? Who's laughing now? Who's laughing now? Pharaoh and his team gets drowned, which means God actually shut down and created a new dynasty in Egypt. Because the Pharaoh died, the firstborns died, so a new generation had to come in, a new dynasty had to come in, a new family had to rule. God splits the Red Sea, part of his legacy. Provides manna in the wilderness for guys, food of angels, part of his legacy. He gave them water from a rock, legacy, a story that they can tell up to today. Then he gave them land when they reached the promised land. He tells them, I care and I'll walk with you. That is my legacy. That is my story. When the Lord is through with them, he says, okay, can you go and tell everybody else what I can do for you? Choose to tell the story of God. That's why David says, let the redeemed of the Lord say we are redeemed. Let them say so. Now, Paul tells us in his second reading, you know my purpose. You know my life. I got a testimony. I got a story. In fact, he says, I would rather pride in the things I suffered than the things I went through. The question then is, what about you? What will people say when you're done? What will your classmates say when you're through? Hey, you are in class 1 up to class 8. What will they remember? By the way, that guy who used to make a lot of noise. That could be the legacy they left behind. Or, they will be remembering you with the noise making, or will they remember you differently? What about your schoolmates? The whole school will remember. By the way, who was that? Who are you talking about? We can't even remember his name. Don't be like, okay, Enoch. Enoch has one verse in the Old Testament that talks about him, and one verse in the New Testament. Enoch walked with God and was not, for God took him. People like Paul, a whole book is written based on him. From the book of Acts chapter 9 all the way to 28 talks about the life of Paul. Enoch had one verse. A verse. Chief, a verse. Now, some of us here, they will just write, and Jerry was born and died. At the age of 22. Really? I'm sure most of you must have been reading about the guy of Wakanda, Wakanda Forever guy. Passed on at the age of 43. But most of us know the guy. He was a great actor. He was a marvelous guy. Excellent. In fact, a friend of mine commented and said that I'm just feeling like I lost someone I personally knew. Of course, he didn't know me, but because we saw Black Panther, we related with him. But when he was even sick, he would visit children in the hospital. So in the lives of those children, some may not live long because most of them had cancer, but some will always remember the actor who came and spent time with us. That was his legacy. But some of us, in the estate where you live, they'll be saying, in that how there's a boy. I didn't know. We've never seen him. In other words, they will say, "Oh, I'm that one who comes out when his ball has landed in the road and he just goes back, or the one that walks the dog, or the ones that people know throws stones." What is it people will remember in your estate about you? What about your colleagues? Those of you who are working at your place of work, can they tell your story? What about your parents? Can your parents tell your story? That the way as parents we are very funny. We always say, all our children are the same, but then when we get personal, we say, oh, by the way, they are very different. Now they are very different because this one bringing the story was like this one was also like this. There's always something different about children. They are all unique. They may be the same as your kids, but there's always one that is more interesting than the other, What about your brothers and sisters, siblings? What can they say about you? What about your colleagues in church? Are you in the praise team, or you're the one who complains about the music was too loud, the singers sang off key, the drum guy was too excited, so and so raised their hands too high, and the other one closed their eyes when they were praying? I mean, you just criticize, comment. How are we going to remember you? Are you the critic, or you are the blessing? This is what I ask myself. Are you the kind of person people will be able to look back and say, you are a good guy? I'd wanted to play a video, but time won't allow me to play the video. The video of this guy called Alfred, what's his Alfred? Nobel, the founder of the Nobel Prize. I'm sure most of you know about the Nobel Prize. By accident, his brother died. Now, when his brother died, unfortunately, they thought it was him. Now, this guy was a scientist. The guy was a scientist, was a rich guy, stinking rich, made a lot of money, billions of money. And the money came from when he invented dynamite. Now, the dynamite that he invented was used, of course, in war. Guys would make bombs and explode things. So he made a lot of money from people going to war and dying. So when his brother died, unfortunately, an obituary was written in the newspaper, a commentary about the man. Unfortunately, they did not talk about his brother. They talked about him, Alfred, Professor Alfred Nobel. And they talked about how a dangerous man is, who capitalized on death. He's reading his own story about what people think about him. How he's a bad person. He invented, dynamite that explodes, has been used in explosions, used in bombs. They call them dogs of war, or hyenas of the battlefield. Guys who thrived on more people's miseries and suffering. And the more he read, the more he said, "Aya, you mean this is how people think about me? This is what people see me to be." He sat down and said, "No, I must change this. I must change this." So for the first time, he saw how the world saw him. And he said, "You know what? I'm changing this." So he spent the rest of his life to do good. So he said all the money he has saved, he's going to give to a trust that will be used to award people who do peaceful things. So if you write about peace, if you invent something that generates peace, so if you write about peace, you get one for literature. If you're a promoter of peace, you get a peace Nobel Prize. If you are an inventor that invented something that is promoting world peace, you get that. So if you've been in the forefront of peace, you get that. Like Wangari Maathai got one for the environment, because she's been trying to create peaceful coexistence amongst people because of environment. Now, Nobel Prize. Today, if you win one Nobel Prize, you get an equivalent of $100 million. $1 million. That's almost 100 million Kenya shillings. That's what Wangari Maathai got. The truth is this: Nobel had the privilege of listening to people's attitude towards him while he was still alive. Some of us, we will never hear that. Maybe until I tell you. You can choose to be this kind of a friend. There are 5 types of friends. I like mentioning them so that you know. Maybe you're one of this type. Number 1 is the encourager friend. The one that encourages people. The one that inspires people, motivates people, challenges people to go extra mile. The one that really makes you feel so good about yourself. That is a kind of friend. Are you that kind of friend? Because when such kind of a friend leaves, people will miss you and will want to talk to you. They will want to follow you up. They will want to be part of your friendship. They want your network. Number 2 is a sacrificial friend. These are the ones who will sacrifice their comfort to make sure you are comfortable. They're the ones who will go out of their way to make sure that you are happy. They're the ones who will share the little they've got. If you go and visit them, they would even give you their bed and they sleep on the chair. They're the sacrificial friend. The ones that will go out of their way to make sure you have succeeded. They may know how bad a person you are, but they will still hang around with you. Number 3 is the disciplinarian friend. The one that will not spare you when you do the wrong thing. The one that takes no nonsense from you. They know your potential. They know your mistakes, but they will stick around and help you. They discipline you. They will tell you, "Listen, I'm not your father, I'm not your mother, I'm your friend, and I won't sit here while you mess up." That kind of friend. Those are the kind of friends we are looking for. The one who will not allow you to do the wrong thing. They say, "I know your potential. Don't settle for this. Don't settle for less." That's the kind of friend. Okay, now we have another kind of friend. I call them the angry friend. This is a permanent complainer, always grumbling, always seeing the wrong in people, always criticizing, always seeing everything wrong. They have every gossip to tell everybody. You know, they are always bitter. They will tell you about everybody and tell everybody about you. They are not healthy friends. I don't encourage that kind of people. And people will stick around you because you bring gossip and you bring rumors and you bring everything. But immediately they leave, they say, by the way, this guy is a dangerous person. This is a bad company. This is the wrong kind of a person. That's the number 4 friend. The 5th one is what I call the wheelbarrow friend. The wheelbarrow friend is the one that, by the way, is a pain in your life. They have nothing good to add to your life. In fact, they drain you. They sap all the energy you've got. They always are. They never see anything good in you. You have to push them. You know, a wheelbarrow can't move until you push it. You have to push that particular person to actually achieve anything in life. It is terrible. In fact, they are a burden to your life. They are not an encouragement. They don't add anything. They are not an inspiration. They are a burden to your life. Yeah, are you that kind of a friend? Or you are this kind of a person that people will look forward to? Are you a visionary? You always see good in people. You always think, I think we can do better. Let's try. Let's invest together. Let's share this together. You have some new ideas you share with people. You have something you think you can try out new. You've heard of a new place, joint. Let's go and explore and discover. In other words, you're an adventurer kind of a person, always an encouragement to other people. Or are you the one that we regret meeting? You know, the friend we regret meeting, the person we regret meeting. Oh my God. I don't like this guy. Every time I see them, I know there's bad news. There's never something. You know, there's some people that when you see their phone calls, you just said, oh my God, this guy. Are you a permanent complainer, blamer, criticizer? Nothing good comes out of you. You never see anything good in people. Or the last one, are you a bad influence? Are you a bad influence? You always have the bad things to share with people. You think they are great. No. From the videos you want us to see are evil and wrong. From the music you like playing are the bad ones. The ones that come out of your mouth are bad. The Bible says bad company spoils good morals. What kind of a person are you? Remember, when you move, we will talk. What do you want us to say? What will we remember when you're gone? When you leave school, to the next level. When you leave college, to the next life. When you leave campus, to the next place. When you leave this job, to the next place. When you get out of the house, you're going to wherever you go. What will people say? Will your house help remember you as the good boy they raised, or you'll be that terrible one that everybody complained about? I want to finish by saying, brothers and sisters, we need to ask ourselves, what kind of people are we? Because that will be the legacy. We are setting standard for what people will think or say about us. It is like you're writing your own tribute. You're writing your own tribute. When finally you are gone, people will say something about you. The question is, what will they say? I am writing my own tribute. I always pray that I'll be a blessing to somebody, that someone will be able to look back and say, thank you for John Mark. Thank you, I met him. Thank you, he encouraged me. Thank you, Lord, I got to know him. Thank you. Because if you do not become a blessing in the lives of people, you can be the problem in the life of people. They will always say, you are a prayer item. I don't want to be a prayer item for people like, oh my God, God, please remove this person from my life. God, this one is an addict. This one is a... No, I want that I be that prayer item you can be able to thank God for. Thank you, so-and-so came into my life. Thank you, so-and-so has been an encouragement. Thank you, so-and-so has been a blessing. Brothers and sisters, may the Lord bless you, and may you leave a legacy that touches people's lives, that will live generations down the line. You know, the Bible says those who love the Lord, he will bless you up to their 1,000th generation. But those who hate him, up to the 4th generation. In other words, people will soon forget you and move on. But 1,000 generation, they will always thank God for you. That's why we still talk about people like Abraham. We talk about people like David. We talk about people because they were a blessing. Question is, what about you? May the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he scatter the darkness from before your path and give you peace. May the Lord use you to bless people around you. May the Lord use you as an encourager. May the Lord use you as a seed that blossoms whenever people appear, so that God is glorified in your life and in the life of people you touch. God bless you and have a lovely weekend.